No, good evening, everyone. I think we'll make a start. First, to let you know that this evening's webinar event is being recorded, so we'll be putting a link up on the website that I'll mention a little bit later for anyone that couldn't catch the live version this evening, or maybe if you want to rewatch it yourselves after. I'd like to welcome you all this evening and thank you for coming along. To introduce myself, my name is Elaine Barrett and I'm the Community Benefit Fund Coordinator with CCAD Partnership. I've worked in CCAD for about 8 years now and I primarily work on the community benefit funds. My email address there, if you do want to note it, is ebarrett, E-B-A-R-R-E-T-T, @ccad.ie. So to give you a little bit of an introduction into CCAD, so CCAD are the fund administrators for the Oweninny Wind Farm Phase 2 Community Benefit Fund. We're established in 1995. We're a local development company and we provide a range of innovative and effective rural development and social inclusion supports. We have a team of 40 plus staff members and they support various programs such as the Leader programme, SciCap, PEL, TOOS, RSS, and of course the community benefit funds, just to name a few. Our role in working with community benefit funds, we first became involved back in 2015, and that was with the ESB. And we now manage 48 sites that would be solar farms, wind farms, proposed offshore wind farms, and large infrastructure projects also. Our role to support the community. So it varies between small rural communities to urban towns. We work with communities across the island of Ireland, so that's Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And we support a large range of projects from environmental to culture. There really is a huge spread and a variety in the types of projects that come through. And then there's also a huge difference in the scale of projects from quite small projects from €1,000 up to large scale capital projects. We're involved in community development, engagement and collaboration. And supporting small projects with big impacts. Sometimes the small projects are equally as important and have a really big impact, along, of course, with the large scale projects and the legacy and the capital projects. Okay. And the first two websites I'd like to mention, and while I say that, actually, you might see there's a QR code on the screen. So if you want to take the time to scan that QR code, it'll take you directly to the application portal. And the first website that has a wealth of information is owennnywindfarm.ie/community-benefits. So this website really does have a wealth of helpful information. It includes a frequently asked questions section, the fund guidelines, which are vital to anyone putting an application in. So I'd highly recommend that you download those, save them onto your system and keep a copy to hand when you're completing the application. And we also have an area of benefit map on that website, and we'll be taking a little look at that in a while also. And then the second link on there is submit.link/1IS. And this is the application portal. So to apply for funding, you need to use this link to submit an application to the fund, and only applications submitted through the portal will be evaluated. All applications must be made online. I'll speak a little bit later about support available to anyone who might have some IT issues or need a little bit more assistance, and we're certainly there to support you in any way. Okay. So to the fund itself, so this year the community benefit fund value is 115,000. There's two strands of grants that applicants can apply for. The first one is the small grants, and that's €1,000 up to €10,000. The delivery time frame for a successful applicant is 6 months delivery time frame, and you can apply for 100% of your project costs, but it would be looked upon favourably if you also had a contribution of your own group's funding to put with that. And then the second strand is large grants, so that's 10,000 plus one. There isn't an upper limit on that one, and groups need to have a 5% contribution of their own funds in order to put an application forward. And the time frame on that one could be 6 months up to a number of years. We mentioned multi-annual funding there. Usually multi-annual funding is at the discretion of the fund committee, and it can come about where a group put in for a large amount. Maybe there isn't enough available in a single fund year to make one award, and a sum of money is issued per year. So let's say, for example, if you were awarded 50,000 over 5 years, the amount stated in the fund years would all be detailed in your contract application. You may need to look at community finance, and we can certainly make some recommendations there if you want to contact us directly. I would recommend, if you were looking at a large scale project, that you give us a call to discuss before you submit your application. There are certain recommendations and advice that we can give you with that. Then we welcome applications from non-profit groups, so that's community and voluntary groups, charities, social enterprises, clubs and societies. And a key criterion of the fund is that it should be used to benefit the community as a whole. Groups and organisations applying to the fund must be members of Mayo Public Participation Network, or can demonstrate that they're in the process of registering. And if you're not currently registered, there is a link on that fund guidelines document, and that'll take you directly to Mayo PPN website where you can make your registration. Collaborative applications between groups are eligible. However, your application must have a clear lead applicant. So one of the groups collaborating needs to be the decision maker for the project. They need to put their contact details into the application form, and they're the lead contact between us and the groups. If the application is from a partnership or a consortium, again, you need to clearly identify who's going to be in charge of the facility or the project, and a sole point of applicant there between ourselves and the groups. Okay. Next, we come to the area benefit map. So that inner circle on the map there, that continuous red line, that represents the 10-kilometre area of benefit, and that's the priority area for the fund, in line also with the RES guidelines. So groups and projects from within the 10 kilometres will receive priority. Then that outer circle, that broken line, so that represents the 20-kilometre buffer, and if there was insufficient demand from within the 10 kilometres, then groups from that area may be considered. We also have service centres. So your service centre might be slightly outside the 10 kilometres, but they're welcome to apply, and would need to make it really clear in the application that they're the main service centre for the area of benefit. So that's our area of benefit map, and again, priority for the 10-kilometre zone. So next we come to the supporting document that's required for each application. And that depends a little bit on the type of project that you're putting forward. But at a minimum, we would look for you to submit your constitution document, and that would need to be signed and dated. So that will list your organisation structure and your governance. Again, your PPN registration. So you'll have your registration number if you are currently a member, or you can tell us if you're in the process of registering. Quotations, which are very important. So if an individual item, excuse me, costs 5,000 or more, you will need to provide us with 3 quotes from 3 different suppliers. The quotes need to be clear, they need to include the supplier name and address, and they need to be dated within 3 months of your application submission. If an individual item comes in at less than 4,999, then a minimum of 1 quote is required. You also need to make sure in the application you'll be putting in your costings into a table, and you need to make sure when you're entering the numbers and the details into that table that they also match up with the quotes that you're submitting. Then we come to works relating to renovation, construction or refurbishment. It's really important that if your group isn't the owner occupier of the premises or the facility, that you're giving us owner permission. That can apply to, let's say, for example, defibrillators in the side of a community building. It can apply to lighting upgrades, things that you might not necessarily consider, but we would look for owner permission. And again, if you have any queries, if your project needs that, give us a call. Planning permission or a letter of exemption from your relevant local authority. Again, sometimes this can be a grey area. It could be a shed that's of quite a large size, or a polytunnel. And if you're a little bit unsure, you think it might fall into a grey area, I would recommend calling your local authority. And then when you're completing your application, you can tell us that you have that done and that you've confirmed either you don't need planning permission, you don't need an exemption, or if you have been recommended to go for planning or an exemption, we would look that that's in place at the time of your application. For expenditure of more than 10,000, tax clearance must be available for both the group, the applicant and the service provider, and that would be requested at the stage where you receive an offer of funding. And banking information, again, the application form will ask that you have a bank set up in your own group's name, and we would request proof of that, your bank header, should you receive an offer of funding. So it's important to think about those little items as you're going along in your application. Okay. Now, before I go through these, the first recommendation that I would always have for groups is to ask another group member if there's permission to share the application with a family member, someone that doesn't necessarily know the application very well. Ask them to read through it and make sure that it makes really good, clear sense to them. I think when you know a project quite well, sometimes you might miss out on the simple parts of the project that explain it. So it's good to have someone else put eyes on it, make sure that it all makes really good sense. Maybe they might have some recommendations for you or some questions, and you might make some amendments based on that. So in order to make sure that you put your best case forward for your project, I would say have completed all the questions on the application form. Maybe there's one you just put one line in and you skip to get to the next section. So make sure that you're reviewing all the questions and that you have all the information in there and that you're clearly explaining everything. Have uploaded all your supporting documentation. So check particularly that your quotes are in there, that your quotes match your costings. All the documents have uploaded correctly for you. If you have any questions on that, again, you can give us a call and we can check the application that your documents are in there. It's really good to use photos and videos to explain your group and your project. There is a question in the application form where you can complete a little video as you're completing the application. And while the question isn't mandatory, I would highly suggest making use of that. Sometimes it's really good to have the story told from your own voices. You might like to include new service members or current service users to tell a little bit about how your project might make a difference to people's lives. So I'd recommend you use that function if you can. I would say to you, include a clear plan for how your group can deliver on the project. So make sure that while you have a great project, there's a plan in place on how you're going to deliver that, and tell us about how you're going to do that. And you will also want to demonstrate the positive impact that the funding will have on your community. So again, that's coming back to the difference in people's lives as a result of your project. You'll want to refer to the priority themes and how your project will address one or more of them. We'll come to that again a little bit later in the presentation. And you'll want to clearly outline who will benefit from your project. So you want to include the number of users participating from within the priority area, or in the case of a new service, the proposed number of users. And if you're looking for part funding, you'll need to demonstrate that you have further funds in place or a clear pathway to accessing these funds. And then I would advise you to avoid these errors, and they're quite common. So submitting an incomplete application. Maybe you filled out part of a text box, but you didn't fully complete it. Maybe you planned on going back and adding in another document, but you just didn't have time. So again, take a look through the application before you submit, and if possible, have someone else have a look over it for you as well. Not reading or adhering to the guidelines. So the guidelines are vital. I would say have a copy to hand as you're going through the application form. Keep checking your application form against the guidelines. Make sure that you're answering all the questions really, really clearly. Another common pitfall is project costs that don't comply with the quotes. So again, when you're filling out your costing box, let's say, for example, a piece of equipment that costs €1,000, you'll want to verify that your quote also lists that piece of equipment and €1,000 is the cost. Poor project description or a lack of information. So you really can't tell us too much information about your project. We really like to hear the ins and the outs, all of the details. So put a really good project description in there, explain it really clearly, put in lots of information. Just assume that we are hearing about you and your project for the very, very first time, and tell us everything that we should know. A lack of clarity around ownership or planning permission. Again, make sure that you're asking those questions. Any differences, amendments to a facility, you'll need owner permission if it's not your property or your land, and planning permission. Again, if you think there's a grey area there, contact us to ask the question. We'll more than likely recommend that you contact your local authority and verify everything with them. Then the next one is no appropriate governance or committee structure demonstrated. So in the application form, you'll tell us about your governance and your structure, and you'll also be uploading a signed and dated copy of your constitution. So that's quite important that we know your group is properly structured and there's proper governance in place. Missing paperwork such as quotes, evidence of planning permission or exemption from planning permission. Again, that's quite a simple mistake to make. Maybe you planned on uploading it, you moved to another section and you didn't go back. So double check that all your uploads are in there. Have a little checklist for yourself of all the information that you have gathered to put your application and make sure that they have all gone into the application form. And then proposing a project that is not within the area of benefit outlined or does not provide a service to the community within the area of benefit. So again, that priority area is the 10-kilometre area of benefit, and then it extends out to the 20 kilometres. So make sure that you're giving us the correct project air code, because we will go and verify that against the nearest turbine. Okay. So these are the evaluation criteria. So once your application is submitted, it'll be evaluated against these criteria. And I would always encourage groups to pay really, really close attention to this criteria. They're also detailed in the fund guidelines. And again, that's available through the website. That's www.owenannywindfarm.ie/community-benefits. So you'll want to make sure that your project is aligned with each of this criteria and that you've demonstrated and explained that really clearly in the application. So first up is project location. So the project is located within the fund benefit area or provides services to the area from a service centre. And projects located within 10 kilometres will be scored highly in this category. And as CCAD, we will verify the location of your project from what you've told us in your application. Then the next criteria is demonstration of community need, impact and social inclusion. So you'll want to ensure the project demonstrates the need and potential to make positive social and/or environmental impact on the people and the communities who live within the surrounding area. Applicants who demonstrate accessibility and benefits to a cross-section of the community will be scored quite highly in this category. Next, we have capacity, track record and governance. So we want to check that the applicant has a history of community involvement, experience in delivering community projects, and has the capacity to deliver the project, and that's been demonstrated with a clear governance and structure in place. Next, we go to feasibility of the project, and this includes timelines and costs, so that the project can be completed within the required time frame. So for strand 1, that would be 6 months from contract date, and that you can complete it within the budget that you have outlined in the application. Next, we have assessment of thematic objectives and the aims of the fund. So the project supports the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the thematic areas of the fund, that it will clearly benefit the broader community and will improve the quality of life in the area. Applicants who demonstrate a focus on the UN Sustainability Goals number 4, which is quality education, Goal 7, which is affordable and clean energy, Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities, and Goal 13, climate action. You'll be scored highly in this category if you can align with those goals and clearly tell us why. And then value for money. So the project demonstrates value for money and outlines how the fund can provide support that can't be accessed elsewhere through other alternative funding. Applicants who can demonstrate evidence of fundraising and/or contribution of your own community funds to the project would be scored quite highly in this category. So again, that comes back to strand A, where you can put in for 100% of the costs, but it would be looked on more favourably if you're also putting a contribution of your own funds. Then the next criteria is longevity of benefits or legacy impact. So there is a legacy impact of the project on the community, and projects of a capital nature would score quite highly in this category. So that might be community infrastructure project. It'll be still there in 10, 15 plus years, and that it covers a large spread of the community and different groups and age categories. That kind of project would score quite well in this section. And lastly, we come to sustainability. So the project demonstrates benefits in relation to sustainability, where the project requires the purchase of physical goods or materials. The project will source items that are environmentally and socially sustainable, such as items made from recycled materials. And if you're doing that, make sure that you tell us again in your application that you're doing this, that you have sourced the most sustainable option, and the quote and the costings that you're put forward will detail that as well. Okay. So next we have some project images, and these are projects that CCAT have been involved with across the country. So I'll move through these quite quickly and then we'll come to the question and answer section. And I'm sure this time next year we will have lots of lovely images from Oweninny. Now to our frequently asked questions. So because there are so many of us on this event, it simply is impossible to hold a live question and answer. So what I'll do is I'll ask and answer the questions that I would get asked most frequently. However, I do recognise that you might have your own specific questions that you need answered, and there'll be a slide at the end of the presentation with contact information for CCAD. So I'll leave that up for a little while at the end of the event so that you can take a note of our details. And I would really encourage you to reach out to myself or my colleagues. We'd love to hear from you, and we're certainly happy to help and advise at any stage. Okay. So our first question, what is the area of benefit? So Oweninny Power DAC 2, they want to ensure that communities adjacent to the wind farm are the immediate beneficiaries of the fund, and this would also be in accordance with the RES guidelines, where projects located within 10 kilometres of the wind farm would be considered first and given priority. That's also subject to meeting the overall terms and conditions of the scheme and meeting all the other eligibility criteria. So you do also need to do a really good job on the criteria that we just went through, and your application and your project needs to be eligible. If there's insufficient demand for the project funding within the 10 kilometres, then projects up to a 20-kilometre radius would be considered. We do also recognise that there might be organisations or groups which would serve the 10-kilometre area, but that might operate a little bit outside it, and these would be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Then question 2, so who can apply for support? So the fund is open to community and voluntary groups, not-for-profit organisations, charities, social enterprises, clubs and societies, and individuals. If an individual is applying, they would need to clearly demonstrate how the project benefits the community. And when you're applying, you would need to show how you'd use the funds to benefit your community and the environment around the wind farm. If you have any questions and if your group is eligible, again, please do give us a call. Next, we have how does the application process work if the applicant isn't familiar with an online form? So if you need IT support, please do get in touch with us. We'd certainly more than happy to help any group who needs any level of assistance, really right down to taking the application form, applying for a group on their behalf, and we might take the answers over the phone and ask that the group post in documents such as their quotes and their constitution to us. And we're quite happy to do that. We certainly don't want anyone to feel that an online form is going to be a barrier to them putting an application in. So take a note of our contact details on the last slide, give us a call, and we will certainly help you as much as you need. Question 4, how long does the application form take to complete? So if you have all your documents to hand, if you have your quotations, you have your signed and dated constitution, if you need to have planning or an exemption and landowner permission, I would say allow 40 to 60 minutes. If you have those documents to hand, I think 40 to 60 minutes. Now, you don't have to complete the application in one setting. You can complete certain questions. You might want to discuss as a group your responses to some of the questions, and you can come back and complete them at a later time. Certainly, overall, 40 to 60 minutes. And again, I do recommend having a second person look over the application if at all possible. And just a reminder here as well that the fund is closing out on Tuesday, the 16th of July at 5 p.m. So that deadline won't be long coming. So I would say make a start on your application if you haven't done so already. Okay. Question 5, how much can my group apply for? So again, we have the two strands. We have the small grant, which is €1,000 up to €10,000, and there's a 6-month delivery time frame on that. You can apply for 100% of the amount asked, or it would be looked favourably if you had a small contribution of your own to put forward. Then we have the large grants, which is €10,001 plus. There isn't an upper limit in there. And the delivery on that could be 6 months up to a number of years. You'd need at least 5% of your own contribution to put forward in the application. And again, if you have a large scale project, I'd really love if you'd give us a call and we can have a chat through it and we can give you some advice. Okay. Question 6, are staff costs supported? No, individual staff costs aren't eligible for funding. Now, question 7. So what are the themes, the area of focus for the funds? And these are detailed as well in the fund guidelines with some examples for you to take a look at. But to start with, the first theme is biodiversity. And this theme includes projects which help protect, preserve and enhance habitats and life in your community, particularly those that contribute to the ecosystem restoration in your area. Number 2 is environmental sustainability. So this theme includes projects which enhance the local natural and built environment for the community energy efficiency and climate action schemes, or actions as part of a sustainable energy community. The next theme is recreation. This theme includes projects which deliver community-based recreation and sports activities. Next, we have social solidarity. This theme includes projects which generate greater social cohesion and/or generate health and well-being benefits at a local level. Then we have culture and heritage. This theme includes projects which increase cultural awareness and preserve and promote local heritage or enhance local museums or heritage centres. Then next we have tourism. This theme includes projects which develop new or strengthen existing tourism initiatives or which contribute to the local community. And then we come to education. So this theme is towards projects which develop new and strengthen existing education initiatives and make a contribution to the local community. And again, there are some examples on the fund guidelines that you might want to take a look at as well. Okay. So question 8, if I submit an application, when will I hear the result and when can I start my project? So you will hear the results from us between mid to late October. Keep an eye on your email around that time, and also don't forget to check on the junk spam folder of your email. If you have any questions or you feel you might have missed an email, please get in touch with us. Okay. Question 9, when and how will I receive the grant money if I'm successful? So grants are paid out retrospectively against receipts. So the group must fund the project first, complete the process, and then come back into the application portal with a claim for payment. You'll submit a grant drawdown form, invoices, receipts, pictures of your project, a testimonial. There's a number of items that we'll require, and that'll be detailed as well if you're a successful group and receive an offer. And then it is at the discretion of the fund committee. Projects that are less than €5,000 and advance payment up to a maximum of 50%, which would be 2,500, may be made under limited circumstances. Again, if you're a successful group and you receive a letter of offer and contract and you have any queries on your payment schedule, please get in touch with us. Okay, so last question and question 10. Is it possible to receive feedback on an application? Yes, absolutely. I would always encourage groups to come back into us. If you're a successful group and maybe you didn't receive the amount you were hoping for, come back into us and see maybe there was areas you fell down and maybe there's some recommendations we could make. If you're in a group that was unsuccessful, come back into us. We'll review your application. We'll help support you to a future application to the fund if that's appropriate, if the project is eligible and the group is eligible. But I think it's really important when you've put the time and effort into an application, come back to us and get feedback. We're happy to support you in the process for future fund years. Okay. And this is our last slide. So I would like to thank everyone for joining me this evening. Again, we've recorded this event, so we should have a link available up on the website probably early next week. And I'll leave this slide up just for a minute or two if you'd like to note our contact details. We're available. Our landline is 021 4613 432. Email is info@ccad.ie. And also just a reminder that we do have still some spots left on our one-to-one clinics. So we have clinics on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week where you as a group can register to meet with us for 20 minutes. It can be an online meeting or a phone call. You can ask us any questions you'd like. We'll give you feedback and advice on your application. And all you need to do is email info@seacad.ie, put Oweninny Wind Farm as the subject, tell us your group name, your contact details, and what date and time would suit you best. And we'll do our best to accommodate you around your chosen date and time. And again, another reminder, just because time flies, that the fund will be closing out on Tuesday, the 16th of July at 5 p.m. So thank you for your time, everyone. I'm really looking forward to getting to know everyone over the next few weeks and obviously years. So I'd like to thank you very much. Please do get in touch with me if you have any queries. Thank you.